Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to call to order the Conservation Advisory Council for the town of Niskayuna. This is the April 1st, 2026 meeting. And Clark, could you call roll, please?
Laura, can you do that? I don't have the list in front.
Oh, sure. Yeah. In person, I see Dan McPherson, Chuck Petrowski. Oops. Joy Wang and Chairman Dart Strayer.
We have one more person, Dan.
She called me.
Oh, did you?
Oh, and Ellen's here. Ellen Daviero.
Oh, okay. And Ellen's here now. Perfect. Okay. We have no minutes to approve. So what I'd like to do is open the floor up, the privilege of the floor. Roy, if you'd like to address the committee, why don't you?
No mic here, so I'll try to speak up.
We'll get you a mic. It's,
Thank you. Is this working?
yeah.
Great. Some of you have seen this material before, some of you haven't. What I thought I'd do is very briefly bring you up to date on what happened last summer and then express a couple of concerns. One of those is about mowing schedules, and the other is about invasive plants. The 18 nest boxes, I visited them about 20 times, and about 50 swallows, plus or minus, fledged from that successfully. Bluebirds, not so many. There were only 2 that were successful, so about 10 birds fledged out of that. Then a variety of grassland birds were seen: bobolinks, savanna sparrows, eastern meadowlarks, and song sparrows. And then, interestingly, there are a few of the killdeer around on the grounds that I think Matt Yetto saved a nest last year by putting something around it out on the baseball field. Some photographs, some of which you've seen, some of which you may not. The gentleman who has done the banding in the past has aged out, and I do have a name of somebody who might be able to take over. I've been doing this personally since about 2012. When I went out on the landfill, the nest boxes were neglected, and so I've been repairing and monitoring and emptying. A combination of birds that I've seen and that I've picked up on Merlin is quite long. Then the low-mow zones seem to be helping. There's quite a variety of wildflowers and insects in those. A couple of beetles that I didn't know existed. Then on the landfill cap, Mulliflora rose is really creeping in, as well as teasel, Phragmites, which is that huge tall grass, and there's some wild parsnip near the big baseball field at the corner near the trail. And I tried to dig it out, but knowing what it can do to your skin, I decided not to do much about it. I did report it, but it doesn't seem to have done anything. Then Asian bittersweet. Are any of you not familiar with Asian bittersweet? It's
I'm not familiar with it, please.
okay. It has the orange berries with the yellow hulls. Birds like it, which is the only thing about it that's good. It strangles trees, and it will go up into the tops of trees and put out enough foliage to actually kill the trees. The buckthorn is another. These are all foreign invasives that is coming in along the edges. Garlic mustard grows about this high, and it'll form a mat on the ground and push out other things. Japanese knotweed, there's a good bunch of it along the south end of the big cap that is being beaten back by mowing right now, but maybe something could be done about it. And then it's not confined to the Blatnick Park. There's invasive species all over this town. Management of invasive species is tough. And on the landfill, probably should mow at least once a year. And to avoid hurting pollinators and birds, do it before May 15th or after October 1. Spot application of herbicides. I don't know whether that's a total no-no or whether that could be done using a contractor to come in and use it very sparingly.
Right, are there best practices? I mean, is the challenge finding someone who can apply the herbicide in the correct method, or are you concerned about applying it at all?
I'm concerned about whether the town will allow it or not.
Okay. I guess what I'm asking is if it's done in the correct way, is that something that you would recommend to get rid of some of these invasive species?
I think that spot application
Okay.
would be a
think it's a good way to get
reasonable
rid
way to do it. For bittersweet, it's best done in the fall, cut the stem, paint the stem. For multiflora rose, again, cut them, maybe not only in the fall, but cut it and then paint the stems. Or maybe just spray a small area around where the stems were cut. I think it could be done without risking pollution in the river or damaging the wildlife.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Then purple loosestrife, I haven't seen that at the park, but it's around, and there's a beetle to control that eats only loosestrife. And when the loosestrife dies out, the beetle dies out. So it's not another species that's going to cause a lot of trouble. These are some of the plants, and these are right here at Town Hall. If you walk around the perimeter of Town Hall, you'll see the Oriental bittersweet. That's what it looks like in the early part before it flowers. The one on the right is a tree being overwhelmed by the bittersweet. Invasive honeysuckle, that's in the bushes. I'm not sure, probably out there. And the buckthorn is also pretty prevalent right here. And at the park, that set of vines has since been cut. I took a chunk out of one of them that had been there for over 50 years. But it killed 2 or 3 trees in that zone near the dog park. Phragmites is a bear. I don't know how to deal with that one. It just keeps growing. It starts in wetlands, crowds of cattails, creeps up onto the landfill. That is a multiflora rose on the bottom left before it blossoms. And then a winter shot down near that lower part of the bike path that's closed now. And it's just a briar patch. There's a tree that's one of the trees that's been strangled by bittersweet. Upper right is teasel. It's a kind of a spiky head. Florists sometimes use it for making bouquets. And then the Japanese knotweed, a distant shot and a close-up shot of the big patch that's on the south end of the major landfill cap. Mowing has driven off bobolinks and meadowlarks. Last year I went out the 1st of July and they had started mowing the disc golf path. And the disc golf path is in this area right here. They cut a very wide path, but they waited until it got tall. And bobolinks and meadowlarks had started in there. And after the mowing, I didn't see them anymore. So the schedule that would work for both the birds and the pollinators would be actually in two parts, the low-mow areas and the disc golf paths. For the low-mow areas, mow once before April 23rd, plus or minus, and or once in the fall, and set those mowers as high as they can. For the disc golf paths, mow it before the birds come in, and then as needed to keep the grass short so it doesn't tempt nesting birds into it. I've got some questions about whether the disc golf course is really paying for Niskayuna at all. They had a meet here this past weekend. I don't know, any of you aware of that?
No.
I was hiking, I saw them doing it.
Okay, well, they charge anywhere between $25 and $50 a piece for people to participate, and I doubt that any of that comes to the town. So, I don't know, the mowing costs the town, the maintenance of the pads, which is very poor, probably costs the town, and is it really worth it? So, the low-mow areas are well-used. They're vital to the grassland birds, and they do provide good habitat for pollinators and other insects. And I do need to thank the town for all they've done actually to help bring about the low-mow and the other beneficial aspects of the landfill. Thanks.
Thank you, Roy.
Thank you.
Okay, we have an addition to the agenda. So what I'd like to do is, Justine? Okay. Yeah, I would like, that's fine. I would like to ask Justine Hellner to come up and talk to us about Lomo. It's actually a good segue. And Laura has your slide presentation? Okay.
Yeah, she had it.
Up, there it is. Okay, perfect. So why don't you come up and grab the mic from Roy and,
Should I put this, or this is, you guys can see this okay?
yeah, we're good with that.
Do I need the microphone?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
It's a long process, but
It's
but we'll get there.
it's for the
Thank
people
you.
at home.
Got it. Hi, I'm Justine Heilner. I work for the New York State Canal Corporation and the New York Power Authority, and I am a landscape architect. All of my work is on the canal. I, with my colleague Carrie Ficken, who is in NYPA's Sustainability Department, have been working over the last year to start a reduced mowing program along the canal system. So you probably are aware because it runs through your town, but the Erie Canal and Champlain Canal and all of the canals in New York total up to about 524 miles of waterway. And along the sides of those waterways are lands that we manage along in partnership with communities and other entities all along the way. But one of the things that we do to manage that landscape is mow a lot. And as you just heard, and as you probably know, because you're the conservation board, mowing has its benefits, but it also limits biodiversity and it limits the quality of habitat. So we see this long stretch of land across the state as a real opportunity to improve biodiversity for the state of New York. Also, we can think about how we manage lands differently, which affects our staffing and our resources and all of those things. So this slideshow is something that Carrie and I put together actually for our maintenance meeting last fall, but I thought it was really perfect for this as well. As you all probably are aware, we are in a state of crisis in terms of biodiversity across the world. That affects our food systems, it affects our economy. It's really important that everyone can do what they can in the way that they can to address that. And for us, that is thinking about how we manage our habitats. Next slide. We're exploring many different ways to improve our habitat. We're working on a vegetation management plan. We're thinking about reforesting areas where possible. But a lot of that is a heavy investment of money and time and resources, and we don't always have that available when we're trying to do all this other maintenance of very old infrastructure. So our first step is just to look at reduced mowing. And that is something that will help our staff time and also start to help us achieve these goals. So next slide. It'll improve habitat and biodiversity. We reduce greenhouse gases. It's beautiful. It looks beautiful in all different seasons, and it allows a lot of different animals to use those resources besides just people using it like a lawn. And stormwater in some places, that's another issue that this can help. Next slide. These are just some examples of what that might look like in canals. If you're familiar with the canal sites, especially around locks, they're usually very mowed and very manicured. And maybe we don't need to do that everywhere. Maybe we need to rethink how much of that space needs to be that way. Sometimes we mow for safety reasons. And so we're figuring out what the right approach is for all our different kinds of landscapes. But we definitely can do less and do more at the same time. Next slide. A 22 inventory that we performed as part of the Monarch CCAA, which is a plan to pre-register state-owned lands into an agreement that we preserve monarch habitat. We did an inventory of our lands, and we identified at least 375 acres of potential monarch habitat that could be supported by not mowing. There are a lot of other creatures that use these lands, but we happened to be thinking about that when we did that original inventory. So what we did last year, next slide, is we sort of started our program just in the fall and identified 15 acres that we thought we could definitely reduce mowing on. Our process for that involves first looking at like, what is this land? Sometimes it's wetland, sometimes it's forest. These were areas that definitely were like lawn-like areas, and that we vetted with our real property and our operations teams to see if that was okay. And so these were the 15 acres. We actually ended up doing more than that when we got out on site that we identified we could definitely start. So next slide.
Where's that one site?
Oh, which one?
In the east. One right above
E9,
Albany,
Lock E9 area.
like E9.
Yeah, so that's just a little bit further up from you all, I think.
Mhm.
We had some interns, which was great, from RPI. We brought them out with us, and we worked with our staff at the different locations and staked out areas. And all we did was we put these metal stakes in, we put some signs, and we talked with everybody about what the goal was. So as we did that, we learned more about other potential locations, learned more about how we mow and what kind of equipment we use. So it was a good fact-finding mission, as well as staking out these areas. Doesn't look very different right now, but as the years go on, we'll see those areas not be lawn anymore. As we heard in the last presentation, some of the mowing is to keep woody material from growing up or other invasives. So we won't be not mowing at all, but instead of mowing several times a month, we'll be mowing maybe once or twice a year, maybe only every 2 or 3 years, depending on what's happening on each site. So part of this whole process is not just putting up stakes and walking away, but learning a new way of managing. Might need different equipment. It might need a different plan or staff. So that's all of these things are things we're kind of figuring out right now. Next slide. We made some nice signs, and these are just some facts that we collected along the way about how many hours we spend mowing every year. That's staff time that could be doing something else. What the signage looked like. We definitely learned that we need to communicate. We need to do education both for our own people and for the public. I know that in some places, lock staff are concerned that the community will think it looks messy or we're not taking care of it. So part of this whole project is figuring out how to explain what we're doing and explain that not doing something is a form of care sometimes. And also figuring out how we can monitor what the outcomes are. So we've been talking with some researchers at RIT and other places to think about monitoring for species diversity or other things that we can measure and collect data on that. Next slide. So next up, we're identifying locations now for this year. We've got quite a bit more ambitious, about 95 acres that we're looking at this year, maybe more, maybe Lock 7, for example, and then developing mowing specs. And another thing that we'd like to do is start branching out and working with interested volunteer groups. If there are places where we can do something a little different, or we have a dedicated group that can pay attention to the site and help us maybe do more than doing nothing. Next slide. So these are the sites that we are looking at for this year, all along the system. And next slide. We still don't have Lock 7 on there though. So, so I was excited when I heard there was an interest. Mm-hmm. And we're developing our specs and directions for how to maintain these areas. Next slide. And we are looking for your feedback and any other public people that you know. So that's my presentation, but I'm happy to also just talk.
So have you seen our LOMO signs and our LOMO areas in Niskuna? Okay. And then so do you have a picture of Lock 7?
I don't have one with me. I really wanted to just hear what your thoughts were about it. I'm familiar with it and I was curious
So
what
when
prompted.
you drive up to Lock 7, I guess the question is what land is owned by you and maintained by you?
So my understanding is that, and I'm sorry I don't have a slide, that would have been smart of me to bring, but I can follow up with this.
I was just trying to Google it on my thing, but
It doesn't show the permit though. Your area is kind of a rectangle that spans the driveway. It includes the boat launch and then on the other side,
so
but
there's
not
a-
up toward the waterfront.
so
That
there-
said, nobody else is permitted for the rest of the area except us. So that's really a conversation about what we want to do with that space.
So last year they put in the picnic benches and in that area. But when you drive up right on the right hand side, when we were there when we watched them come through for the anniversary, there's that whole space that could be done for LOMO where the overflow people parked. But my two suggestions would be similar to basically what we have done over is to contact. We work with Nick at the soil at Schenectady Soil, and he put down for us compost, and then every year, I only have a small allotted number of dollars, but I have a path that he has mowed that gets mowed wide, and I keep building out, different wildflowers and different native plants.
So you're actually planting, not just not mowing.
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
And is that what you're thinking you'd like to see in that area?
Well, I think that it helps protect it, helps bring pollinators. You can then, decide what you want it, to look like.
I think we're open, especially when there is a dedicated community that can help take care of things. The thing that's really hard for us right now is staff time. And, staff that are trained to do that kind of work. Our staff are often bound by their union roles and what they're supposed to be doing. To be doing specific gardening is not really in their wheelhouse right
So
now.
there's no gardening.
Yeah.
There's no gardening.
Weeding.
There's no weeding.
That's great.
It's you lay the compost down, you plant your flower, you depending on your thing, and it also depends on how much compost you have or soil or what access to whatever, and you just put it down and you just put your seeds down either early spring or late fall, and then you mow. And
Cool.
you just keep mowing once a year or twice a year, and then that's that.
Yeah.
And then you kind of let it go, and it has that area just has grass, and I I haven't been down there this year to look at it, but
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
curious to maybe take a walk there sometime with someone or just look sort of desktop exercise because I don't go there frequently enough to know how people are using it. So one consideration is my understanding is it's kind of used like a park. So you don't want to take away all the lawn. You want to do it in places where, you're not taking something away from people that they're using. So
I would
Yeah,
say
I-
it's your overflow parking.
Yeah, I'd say there's spaces for
Mhm,
definitely
yeah.
do Lomo, and we are really trying to encourage
mhm,
commercial businesses to do Lomo. 'Cause We
Mhm.
have a lot of big lawns.
Yep.
I think people have been really positive about it within the town.
That's great.
I think
Mhm.
when we first started it,
mhm.
there was a little
yeah,
hesitation,
people
but
are-
I think we've turned that corner. So
That's
we
great.
would love to work with you.
Yeah, that sounds great. I would love to do that too.
In the early part of your deck, there was a
Mhm.
slide about how you've already reduced mowing.
Yep.
Are those your own mower staff?
You
Or-
mean like the hours of mowing?
I saw there was a potential amount you could save, but there
Mhm.
was like, I don't know what the
Oh.
acreage was. Some amount of acreage you've already
The
implemented.
15. I mean,
Yeah.
it was small, but I think we ended up doing a little bit more than that, but it's still,
Are those the mowing staff from your own organization?
yes.
Okay. Have you had any luck with the neighboring communities?
That's sort of
Right.
the next step.
Okay.
And
That's
I
what
mean,
this is,
that's,
right?
yeah, that's what this is, right? No, and you may know this, but different parts of the canal are maintained by us. And then a lot of, it's very patchwork. So it's a really kind of complicated thing to implement something like this because there are all kinds of permits and interested parties.
You definitely have a space down there that can do
Yeah.
Lomo. And you
Mhm.
because
Yeah.
you have, it's the overflow parking.
hmm
And then they have the paved parking and the
Mhm.
not paved parking.
Yep.
And then over there, they have the launch and all that stuff.
hmm
But in between all of that,
hmm
that all probably needs to stay like that because that's where people,
Yeah.
do their boats and
Mm-hmm.
have their picnic area and stuff like that. But this other part, I would just ask, his name is escaping me, the man who runs the lock, but
John?
yeah, he would be able to tell you
Yeah.
how often
Mhm.
people park there, what they need, but
Yeah, I'm not really sure why this site didn't make it into that original identification, but I don't see any reason why it shouldn't be part
What,
of it.
is this something that the Canal Corp would be willing to move like this year on, or is this?
Yeah,
Is it
I mean,
too
at
late?
least for staking out. I think the bigger project of bringing in compost and paying for plants,
no,
like,
I understand
but
that,
yes,
we could
I
start,
think so,
we could
sure.
start something this
Yeah.
season.
for sure. Once I get it okayed by our operations staff.
Yeah, yeah.
That's the main thing. I think the only other sort of thing that you might not be aware of that we would want to check is how they need the space when they're doing lock maintenance every 10 years.
Yep.
And that's something we always look at as well. But it sounds like this area is kind of not where they would be staging or,
she
yeah.
pulled it up. She pulled
Great,
it up for you.
perfect.
Roy has a question
Yeah,
for you
Roy
behind you, but
Mhm.
so if you pull it up,
Mhm.
so wait a minute. Where is she? That's lock 7. That how when you pull in the road. Yeah, it's the second road.
Mhm.
Yeah, so all that to the right. There's some trees in there.
Mhm. So,
I don't think
So you can see the parking lot,
yes, I see the
there,
parking
and the
lot
boat launch is up
and
in the
yeah,
top
up
left
in there.
corner.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but all
Mhm.
that in the back right is what I'm
Mhm.
talking about.
So like down over
Yeah,
there.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was kind of
Mm.
thinking when I was looking at it, I was thinking about that, but I wouldn't want to assume if there's some event or something,
Well,
where you
people- the
use
only-
it. So
The only other thing is people fish
Mhm.
along the
the
wall
edge.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. Is it
So-
good that people are fishing there? That's another question that,
Well, that's a good question.
I mean, that's a
That-
question for our staff.
Yeah.
One thing
Yeah.
that we're kind of working on right now, because we're becoming more park-like and we know people like to fish, is helping people fish in safe places and helping discourage fishing in unsafe places. So sometimes you can do that with design.
Yeah,
So
I can't
whenever-
answer that question.
Yeah.
Whenever
I
I've been down there and I've seen fishing, they have been on the other side, like
Interesting.
right
Yeah,
around where
mhm.
the boat launch is,
Mhm,
and then
mhm.
out towards the all in
Mhm.
that area.
Mhm. Yeah,
right.
people, they like to be right at the bottom of the
Right at
lock
the
because
bottom.
something about the water churning is very
Oh, okay.
attractive to
All right.
fish.
All right. I must not ride my
So
bike
you're,
by
so
there
maybe a
that time.
path or maybe no path. I don't know,
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
that's like
That's-
details we could work out.
That's kind of nice too. I mean, well,
Mhm.
the mode path that we do
Yeah.
and we do the different flowers on it. But Roy, did you
Roy,
have a question?
I want to recognize you. Did you have a question?
Just a quick comment.
Mhm.
The Cornell Cooperative Extension
hmm
could be quite useful. I don't know if Nick Klemzek is still.
So Nick works for the soil
Mhm.
and conservation. So Cornell Cooperative Extension is your master gardeners, but
Mhm.
and they work together.
Mhm.
But Nick is for Schenectady County. He does the he has a very long title, but he's very helpful with because they compost. He creates compost and he is very kind and distributes it throughout the county. So he brings it.
Has equipment for seeding.
So
That
he
could be a
does, but-
fun learning experience for us and maybe showing how it works to our other interested parties. So,
So,
Mhm.
yeah, and yeah, depending on your, the nice part about that is, I mean, if he came in, he would just come in with his truck and just drop all the compost and kind of spread it, and then
Yeah.
you go, and then you take care of it after that. You do
Yeah.
do the seeding.
Yeah.
And then it kind of just all melts away.
Mhm.
But at least that's how it
Yeah.
worked for us.
So is our next step here a working group with Justine?
We could do that.
Yeah.
And if so, who would like to volunteer to work with Justine?
I feel so much happy.
Yeah,
You can come back to me with that.
we can, and that's also a question for
So
Laura
I
too.
just want to say, all right, so like I do the composting and I do the low mow and I dabble in a lot of the other ones. So I would just say, I mean, I'm more than happy to help you with the other things, but I do want my other council members to also work with
Yeah.
the community
hear what you're
outreach and to
saying.
pick up a side hustle, as you would say.
Yeah,
So,
I don't want to, I don't want to put anybody on the
Right.
spot right now,
So,
but
I
we
mean-
That's fine.
will-
You know how
I
to
will
reach
talk
me.
Laura and we'll make sure we get
Yeah.
somebody
Mhm.
to help.
And I
Yeah.
would definitely look at our I mean, I'm really proud of the sign that we designed.
love to see it, yeah.
It
Mhm.
did, it really, it describes everything that we're doing and why it's there.
Mhm.
And although they're getting buried by the wildflowers, there's just, you can only, unless I take out the signs myself, I can only ask. So anyways, yeah. So, but I'd be happy to work with you and,
Yeah.
and
Also, I'm volunteering Ashok because even though he left the Conservation Advisory Council, he loves stuff like this. So,
yeah,
You guys can discuss amongst
Yeah.
yourselves.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, Ellen, I didn't mean to imply that you had to be the volunteer. I was just why I wanted to make sure that Justine didn't leave without having some next steps with us.
Well, I would be happy to bring this to our staff and vet it just like we do all our other sites. And I would be happy to add it to our roster if they're okay with it. So,
I have
Yeah.
a second question. Would you mind if we embedded your presentation in our minutes so other people in the
That's
town
fine.
could see it?
And I would say, the first steps are your design,
Mhm.
what, is communicating with your lock, what that area is used for, and then like what you want to do. And then after that, we can work on coordinating all the peeps to try to help.
that sounds good.
yeah, because Chuck just gave Justine my email, and Justine, you can email me. I can be like the official contact, and then the CAC members that want to help, and maybe the town board member, we can all get together and help whatever you need.
Great.
Sounds good.
Thank you for coming.
Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you.
I see one more question.
Yeah, residents may be interested in learning about your comprehensive environmental studies,
Mhm.
just for engagement and
Mhm.
transparency.
Mhm.
So have you collected public comments?
We have not. This was just an internal desktop exercise to look at, what our land holdings were in a kind of, it was a very high level way. But if we do create anything that is shareable, I would be happy to share it. Yeah.
Are we good? Any other questions? Okay, thank you
Thanks
very
so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chuck.
Okay, yes, go ahead.
Roy, can I just ask you a question? What is the amount of space that a ground nesting bird needs in order to be able to create a habitat?
For Followings is say 20 acres.
20 acres?
And the cap landfill is about 20 acres.
Okay,
But apparently, because I've seen them out there in the low areas, which are not full 20 acres,
right,
the requirement is basically to keep predators from coming in
right.
to the middle area where they're nesting.
Okay. I was just curious.
Pardon?
I was just curious. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I knew there was an amount and I knew you knew. Thanks.
Okay, we go ahead.
I have a follow-up question just for us regarding Roy's concern about the invasive species, the plants along the bike path. The Oriental bittersweet has been a problem in a lot of places. And I wonder if the highway department, because they regularly trim trees, right, in Niskuna, and wonder if they could just do a bike path survey and cut those at the ground level.
Right now, I sense that there is no one responsible for suppressing invasive species in this.
Roy, would you mind going to the podium just so we can hear you? Or
Thanks, Clark.
My impression is there is no one responsible for suppressing invasive species in Niskuna. And maybe I'm incorrect on that, but
This is an issue that we can bring to the highway department because we do have periodic meetings with them.
So this issue has come up before, and Roy and I have gone and walked the property, and we and the problem comes up with the amount of what you need in New York State to be able to work with this invasive species, and you have to, if you're going to cut down certain amounts, you have to, I believe, don't quote me on this, but I believe that you have to involve DEC, and you have to have a special permit in order to cut certain stuff, and you have to have like somebody who is able to be, if it's an invasive species, and how to properly take care of it. So, right when we walked with
Smith is
Smith, Mr. Smith.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Andrew.
What?
the younger, Smith the younger.
The younger Smith.
Andrew.
Yeah, Andrew. That was part of it, but we had discussed things that they themselves, could do as well. But he laid out the groundwork for what would have to, happen. I mean, since that time, I reached out to, I don't have it on my, the
Nick?
person I brought up last time that I brought up to the meeting last time. I don't have his name. Hold on. Anyways. And, he gave me, hold on a second.
Well, the problem may be more complex than just the town of Niskuna can handle, because if you go along the streets in Niskuna, there are town streets, there's county streets, and there's state streets. And every one of those has, you can see the infestations of particularly the Oriental bittersweet, but many other things as well. And there should be a coordinated effort that runs, state, county, and town that goes after these, because if you clean them off the town streets, the county streets or the state streets are going to provide the seed source to just keep it going.
Yeah, so the person was, his name is Christopher Williams. He's with the Invasive Species Coordinator for Capital Region PRISM, and he works out of Saratoga County. And there is an IMAP invasive training for plant identification and mapping, and he's and they're very willing to help us, map areas and to help train us. But we need a volunteer base, and we need somebody to initiate it and to work on it in in Niskuna. And he suggested trying to partner with areas like like, the group in Leishakill or, picking one area and just working on one area and moving along that way, that it's a never ending process. So,
Right.
but,
And things are out of hand and getting worse.
yeah, I don't think they're going to get any better.
Right. Well, thank you for your consideration. And I just turned 85, so I'm not sure I'm up to leading a group. I would walk people around the landfill if they wanted and show them what I see. And you've got
Thank
my
you, Roy.
number. So,
Thank you.
okay.
Okay. Let's move on to the EAFs. We have EAF 2025-1, and this is 2757 Aqueduct Road, known as Niskuna Harbor. And the applicants are here, and by what I understand, you have some additional information that
Yes.
you sent to Laura last evening.
Yeah, actually, I'd like to, since we haven't presented to this board, and I appreciate your time this evening to hear us out with this project, to find out, I'd like to kind of give you a brief history so that you
Sure.
can determine
Let's-
how we've gotten to where we are. And I'm going to rewind about 4 decades
Yep.
to when this PUD was originally created. Thankfully, I've done a lot of work in the town going back about 3 decades, and 4 decades ago, I was making mixtapes and still in high school. So I wasn't involved with this, but this project started as the original PUD in the town of Niskuna. It still is on the map, the zoning map, as a PUD, even though it has since expired because it never got developed. It was approximately 350, I believe, units. I've seen the plan a couple of times. It was a huge project. It had development out along the river. It had boat launches. It had marinas. It had restaurants and a lot of residential parcels. The issue, and I don't know if this is what stopped it back then. I know it's when I got involved with it, which probably is about 2012, 2014. The issue has always been sanitary sewer service to this site. It was no sanitary sewer service. Probably the 350 units would have generated enough to actually be able to develop a sewer system to get to the city of Schenectady, but it just never made it that far. So in 2012, 2014, we worked on several iterations with Niskuna Harbor LLC. Mr. DeSaro, who resides in the town, who's done a lot of development in the town over the past 50 years, and has owned this property for a substantial amount of time. We started working on initial concepts, but again, it always came back to the sanitary sewer. Somewhere in the early 2020s, Mr. Luisi, who was in the middle of developing Rivers Ledge, which is immediately adjacent to this, contacted me because they were switching out engineers. They wanted my assistance in developing a sanitary sewer system along Aqueduct Road to service their property. Obviously, being involved with the project next door, the first thing I did was introduce Mr. Luisi and Mr. DeSaro to try to come up with a solution. I wanted them to be able to come up with, a financial agreement, so to say, so that they could, mutually benefit from the addition of the sanitary sewer service. Mr. DeSaro did make financial agreement with Mr. Luisi to provide funds to help with the offset some of the cost for that additional sanitary sewer, and also was able to obtain an emergency access or ingress easement so that we could try to eliminate some of the potential wetland impacts and environmental impacts with creating a second ingress egress out of this site, because under the new New York State building codes, developments over a certain size require 2 means of ingress or egress. So we knew that was coming along. We wanted to make sure that was taken care of. We wanted to make sure that and the two got along great. They went through with the process. Mr. Luisi built his project next door, Rivers Ledge, 260 units. Mr. DeSaro, we started moving further ahead. Then came, what we were trying to determine is getting the wetland regulations. We spent the better part of a year trying to get the Army Corps of Engineers onto the site. It was immediately post-COVID. very difficult to get them to walk the site and determine which wetlands are jurisdictional, which wetlands are not. And in the process, DEC suddenly came along with their new wetland regulation. So we worked on getting them onto the site as well. I want to tell you a little bit about both of those walks. They were both incredibly positive site walks with both departments, both the Army Corps of Engineers, who looked at the concept plan, looked at what we were doing, looked at our plan, identifying that the majority of our wetland impacts are a function of impacts that are buffer impacts, not which we have to do under the, you've probably heard this, and it's been something that's always been a difficult thing, because they're not even certain how to handle it at the Army Corps under their jurisdictional impacts. In order to impact a wetland buffer in the town of Niskayuna, you have to do a wetland impact permit application. It's the only way to do it. And then you don't, obviously we're not going to go impact that wetland so that we can encroach 5 foot into that buffer area. It doesn't make environmental sense. So, but that's how the process is done, and how the process has to be done in the town of Niskayuna, because the planning board, East Greenbush has a very similar regulation, but it's written into their zoning code. The planning board can waive it and request augmentation of those buffer areas and enhancements, so that you can, make those, encroach into that without including that in a nationwide permit. But we've included all of that in our nationwide permit, and to stay under that magic number of 1/10 of an acre, so that you can move forward with a nationwide permit. And that's something that I've always been very hoping that maybe we can get that particular regulation moved into zoning, so that the planning board and you can have a little more say in that, and in how that is done. Moving forward, we walked the site with DEC after the DEC regulation. The original concept, which had I think it was 205 or 206 condominium units that we had developed, obviously down significantly from the original 350. We walked it with DEC. We were getting feedback from the planning board. We were working closely with the planning board by that point about the pond, the preservation of the pond. Walking the site with DEC, the young lady from the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation was actually quite impressed at how we were able to develop the site in a way that would be sensitive to the wetlands on the site and the environmental characteristics of the site, while attaining some density that we would need in order to develop this parcel. The one thing she asked was, can you try to move some of these buildings a little bit further away and try to maximize this distance from this pond area, the pond and the outlet area? And when you walk along it, you understand why she asked. It's the first thing we did in revamping the plan. We removed all of the houses along that area. We've created a green belt along the pond area. I don't know if you can bring up the first plan that we
Yeah,
sent?
which one did you want? The original one? Or
No,
the
what
new
I'd
one
like to
you
do is
sent?
the colored up plan that we just sent last night.
Okay. I downloaded all of them.
It's the updated sketch plan file. So what we did is we removed all of those condominium units along that pond area there to create a couple of things. One, to create more green space between along that edge of the pond, as DEC had requested, and as the planning board had discussed many times. Also to create almost a focal point for the development itself. My thought is, a gazebo with I think I've got it labeled on the Pond Discovery Center, where you can have signs posted of the different species you're going to find in there. The clubhouse will be nearby, as well as the play area. It becomes almost a park-like setting with a beautiful pond. That being said, there's also a nice 25-foot buffer along there. I would like to augment that buffer area with possibly some willows and American sycamores along the pond. My thought process on that is to keep the water temperature of the pond down as much as possible. That pond is wide open right now, pretty much from both sides because of the utility right of way on the south side, and then it just is kind of open on the north side. But I want to make sure that that area can maintain that pond cooling, and then planting in the understory. I know there's been a lot of discussions of pollinator plants and things like that. Planting in the understory shrubs and wildflower mixes that would help with that diversity. I know in my experience working in the town of Colony, around areas of the Karner blue butterfly, their studies have shown that these utility corridors become huge transportation corridors for insects because of they're cleared open spaces that often generate the type of plant species they look for, which is kind of counterintuitive. You would think that creating these power lines and creating these open spaces would be a negative environmental effect, but actually it happens to be a way that they quite often travel. On a project we did, we ended up providing corridors for the Karner blue butterfly between the utility corridors. So moving forward, that's how we've gotten to that point. And ultimately, New York State DEC did issue a non-jurisdiction on the wetlands, but did ask that, if we could, not that they had any jurisdiction in saying so, because there wasn't, we could do that. And we did. We wanted to work, and that actually brought the unit count from just north of 200. We're now down to 152 condominium units. With in my opinion, a much nicer and more efficient layout. A week ago, we met with Mr. Darden Strayer and members of the planning board to discuss some of the concerns of this board. And we know there are concerns in moving forward with a referral for a negative declaration in regards to the AF. One of the things that was raised that was of concern is that maybe this board didn't have all the information. Like, certainly you don't have the one-on-one interactions we had with DEC and Army Corps on site. You weren't there. I've never explained it to this board, as well as possibly some of the documents themselves. So what I wanted to do was put together a comprehensive expanded long-form EAF, which is a single standalone document, which includes the EAF, all the environmental studies, including the traffic impact study, the phase 1B, the jurisdictional determinations from both the Army Corps of Engineers and DEC, as well as the wetland report, and our interpretation of how this project complies with the zoning code. I felt that that would be an important document for this board to have to make that determination and moving forward. And to be honest with you, it should have been done a long time ago. I wish I had thought of it 2 months ago when you first started looking at this, but I think having that document might help you and assist you in moving forward with the resolution. We did submit that last night, and I know after I left, and I apologize, Mr. Strayer, for having to leave the meeting early on Wednesday. I did have to get to a ZBA meeting in Queensbury. There was a lot of discussion about stormwater management. When we set out to move forward with the town board and to address the sketch plan in the PUD code, it has very specific, and it's conceptual stormwater, which we've provided. Have I done calculations on it? No, I haven't. Do I have a good grasp that that is adequate area? I also always had in the back of my mind that there's going to be, as I go through Section 3 of the New York State Stormwater Design Manual, we're going to be adding in green infrastructure practices as you go, as you are required to do under that process. When you look at Table 3.1 of the New York State Stormwater Design Manual, it talks about things like preservation of undisturbed areas, preservation buffers, which actually are quite nicely incorporated right into the town's code with that 25-foot preservation buffer around all wetlands. Locating development in less sensitive areas, open space design, which essentially this PUD is considered an open space design because we're clustering the development into a tighter area, which in many cases, and I've heard it many times throughout this process, looks very dense. It actually, even though it's an open space design, is a lot less dense than many of the conventional condominium developments I've done over the past 20 years. Roadway reduction, and that's something we'll be looking at. If we can narrow the roadways, working with the fire chief at all to narrow the width of those roadways, particularly a couple of the short stubs, maybe narrowing them down to 22 feet, just to try to get that pavement area down as much as possible. Sidewalk reduction, we've reduced it quite a bit already, but the planning board also has a, they're looking at it from a pedestrian accessibility standpoint. So we are going to be providing some sidewalks to the site, but we are trying to reduce them as much as possible. And some of the walking paths and stuff, I'm thinking may end up being a stone dust or mulch type of walking path that are a little more environmentally friendly and less invasive for the hardscape. Driveway reduction, we actually have gone through and tried to reduce the driveways as much as possible. We are looking at, having one car length stack. This type of design, the nice thing about all of the units that we are proposing, every unit has its own garage. So that allows us to reduce the driveways even more. Also allows us to reduce the open space parking. Also allows us to reduce things like accessory parking garages. In the town of Niskayuna, the multifamily code requires one garage parking space for every unit. So we've tried to provide that here, but they're incorporated within these building footprints. Cul-de-sac reduction, we aren't proposing any cul-de-sacs. We're proposing a wide turnaround at the end of the emergency access. Again, parking reduction, as I discussed. And then, moving into table 3.2 of the New York State Stormwater Design Manual, you got conservation of natural areas. Again, we're trying to incorporate as much of the natural area as possible. And the biggest one, which I haven't even brought up yet, is the 12 acres along the river. We are not proposing crossing the barge canal at all. We had an early discussion early on with the developers about seeking approval for that. And it was always determined, listen, we need to provide a public benefit. There's a town park adjacent to this. Let's offer this to the town and give it to the town for the extension of that town park. The extension of riverfront land, which becomes forever conserved within the town's parkland inventory, preventing future developments. I know researching coastal zone management and wetland requirements and freshwater wetland act, everything is against individual development of riverfront lands. When you look at the Hudson River and things like that, they would rather see a park or public use or, even something more intensive for shipping uses and utilization of the waterway for what it was original, than seeing residential homes along riverfront property. So that has always been in the developer's mind, to provide that to the town for open space. Reduction of clearing and grading. Again, we are going to reduce the clearing and grading as much as possible. I know there's concerns about the wetland area or the stormwater management in and around those wetland areas. One of the things that I'm going to get to in a minute is discussing implementation, and you can see them throughout a couple of areas of bioretention basins. I've got 3 of them shown on the site, the largest one being there. And I always knew that we were going to be doing something in this area behind these houses. We haven't gotten to that point yet to help augment the stormwater management system. I like bioretention basins. I actually love bioretention basins. I think they're a great stormwater management practice. I think the first ones that were ever done in the town were done at Iroquois Apartments over off of Hillside Avenue. I wouldn't say they're being maintained exactly how I would want them, but they are bioretention basins. They should have a little more shrubbery and plantings. They're functioning well, though. They do a good job. They also provide a diversity of species, cypress trees. Those have cypress trees in there. I'd be hard pressed to find cypress trees anywhere else that size in the town of Niskayuna, but they are native to this area, just not found an awful lot. They do grow very well in bioretention basins, and they do a great job with uptake, as well as your red maples, but you also have to keep those low shrubby type of systems in there. The systems we actually have, and I don't know if I'm going to have enough depth on this site to do this. Those systems actually was a unique design. I did it. I don't know if any of you ever worked with Josh Carvajal from New York State DEC. He was like one of the forefronts when the whole New York State Stormwater Design Manuals and the NOIs came out. Carol Lamb LaFay and Josh Carvajal were kind of heading it up, and I worked with him on the ones that I didn't work with him over here in Niskayuna, but I also worked with him down in Bethlehem on some very similar ones at Beverwick Senior Community. What we did is, not only is it a stormwater quantity, what we did is we did a stone layer underneath it, and I don't know that I can do that here because of depth to bedrock and such. To the basins there actually have a stone layer, which as is your storage layer, so you can again minimize those open stormwater management ponds to control the quantity that you see throughout. I've worked on many facets with trying to design and minimize the footprint of those old, what you see as typical stormwater management ponds, because nobody really likes them. Let's face it, they're not as attractive. Unfortunately, we do. It's the nature of the beast. You do have to have them when you create impervious area, but we try to minimize as much as possible. We also identified several areas where I would like to take roof runoff and disconnect it, obviously, which is also part of the table 3.2 is the disconnection of roof runoff, and creating rain gardens in between some of these buildings. Again, I don't know if I could take 100% of the roof runoff because you're limited on the amount of roof area you can take into a rain garden and still have it function properly. But I do want to try to maximize that as much as possible to minimize that amount of water, to improve the water quality. Also, at the end of the day, all of this is going to help reduce the size of the stormwater management areas that are at the other end of the site as much as possible. We're also looking at, dry swales or wet swales, depending upon the groundwater depth, along with the townhomes in the front. All of this, I think, is going to essentially shrink the size of those to the maximum extent practical, which I know is everybody's intent here. The other item that I didn't mention it in the letter, and I've been thinking of it since, looking at those, and again, the nature of the beast with these stormwater management practices, New York State Stormwater Design Manual requires you to have road access to it now. It wasn't that way years ago, but what they found is they weren't being maintained because you didn't have road access. I would like to look at some additional measures where we can create road access without putting down an impervious crusher run road. One of the things I've been utilizing, actually I've been utilizing it a lot up in Lake George and Queensbury are geogrids, which are actually they're a plastic grid. They're mat you can roll out as long as you're not getting a ton of traffic, and they can be filled with pea stone. That allows the water, and they become basically like a porous block to allow vehicles to drive on that. I would like to look at some of those measures as well as we go through the stormwater management design process. Again, we haven't taken it to this point. We intend on taking it to this point as we go through the design process. And then, we did talk about some additional tree planting along the pond in that area. Obviously, there's going to be, a substantial landscaping plan as we go through the process, as there always is. And then I know there was discussions about maintaining or designing the system for the 100-year storm event. While I can't at this time commit to that because it almost is a mix of give and take, because as you design these practices get bigger, they disturb more area. If there are sensitive areas, and this, Clark, I've worked with the planning board on multiple occasions with their concerns regarding stormwater management in sensitive areas within the town. to try to provide as much stormwater management as we can within reason. And I'll tell you one, we ended up providing the 100-year storm, and not just the 100-year storm based on the statistical average of the 100-year storm. We based it on the 90th percentile of the 100-year storm, which is so far above and beyond any storm that we've ever seen in this area since they've started keeping records. It's excessive, but that was something the planning board had asked. So we made every attempt to try to mitigate those measures as much as possible. While I can't commit to that, we will be working to try to contain as much of it. My basins are always designed to contain the 100-year storm. As far as the pipes and such, likely they're going to be inundated with water during the 100-year storm event. And then moving on to how we came up with the density on this parcel. And I know there's been a lot of things going back and forth with maximum density, maximum allowable density. How is density created in a PUD? How is density created in average density development? When we met last week, the example that was set forth below us was an average density development, the Kelts Farm development, which actually falls under section 2, chapter 220, article 6. Actually, I think it's article 5. I think that's a typo in my sheet. A separate article for average density development, which showed that the developer provided a sketch, removed the wetlands from the sketch, and that's how they came up with the density. I agree with that for an average density development. I agree with that methodology for Kelts Farm. That is exactly what is stated in the town code, that you are to provide a sketch, you are to remove sensitive areas, you are to take a look at that. PUD, which is the next article, an entirely separate section of the code, does not refer to sketches at all, does not refer to removal of wetlands. It refers to providing a calculation and based off the maximum density of the base zoning. I've looked at other towns' PUDs. Most of them are similar, where they give you an average density. Some of the towns actually have already listed the density out for you. Hey, you can do this many units per acre. You can do this many. Some have said you basically take the lot area that you could be provided, divided into the area. I only found one other town that required you to remove the wetlands from that calculation, but it was always a calculation, not a sketch. And again, average density developments and cluster developments in those other municipalities always make the statement, provide a sketch. So we have provided a calculation, which has been shown on the plan. We cross-checked this calculation with the only other PUD that I'm aware of in the town of Niskayuna, which was approved in 2023, which is Rivers Ledge. Rivers Ledge has 260 units on it and is 26.2 or 7 acres. So just over 26 acres. So they've got 10 units per acre. It didn't take me a long time to figure out how they came up with the density number. When you start digging through the code under multifamily development, it gives you a specific units per acre. It says multifamily development, you can put 10 units per acre of apartments, which is what was applied at Rivers Ledge, or 6 units per acre for condominiums, which if we did that here, and Rivers Ledge did not remove the 4 acres of wetlands that they have on the site. If we applied that here, we would end up with, I think it's 239 units for our maximum density. We ended up using our own density calculation based upon the base zoning, which is lot area. I even took it, a lot of calculations don't require you to do this, but I even took it in so far as to do lot area plus right of way for the lot. And I ended up with, Laura, can you scroll over to the right? Because I don't have the number right in front of me. It's 209 units maybe with the 30%. And taking that one step further, if we were to remove wetlands from that and utilize that calculation, we'd end up with 181 units. we feel that this is the way in the intent of the planned unit development code is written. Obviously, next door, do I agree that that was the exact calculation that maybe should have come? I don't know. I don't know where those decisions or how those decisions were made. I do feel confident that utilizing our base zoning area lot size per acre is adequate. I'm going to step back for a moment. I'm going to let Chuck talk a little bit more if he's got anything else to say, because he always has some good stuff to say.
Sir, what was your name and role on the project? I didn't get that.
I'm sorry. Brett Steenberg Consulting Engineer.
Okay.
I'm the professional engineer. I apologize. I always introduce with that, but I think
That's okay. Thank you.
Hi, Chuck Pafundi, owner's rep for Niskayuna Harbor. Yeah, so again, I want to thank everybody for the time for tonight and the meetings prior. As Brett explained, it's been a long road working through all the regulatory agencies, working closely with the planning board, planning department, I think Laura and Clark. I think we have a great product here. I understand the overall preview of this board is on a larger outlook of the environmental, but I think on what we can provide the community with this project in a sense of, the look at the comp plan and look at the overall zoning that we're proposing here is really a diversity in housing stock that can be brought to this town. And it's a type of housing stock that is more obtainable in price point than the other typical R districts in the community. Other R districts provide larger lot areas, which is spaces out infrastructure, which spaces out the overall cost per lot, which is what drives up the price of homes. As Brett explained, clustered design like this allows infrastructure to be cannibalized on these unit counts, right? Which makes a price point that's not really common in Niskayuna and other R districts. And that is even stated within certain sections of the comp plan that we had kind of worked with the planning department, planning board over the course of the last couple of years, that diversity in housing stock is really important to communities, right? So long story short, we love to continue to work with this board on any other concerns. We tried to add wildflower mixes and pollinator flowers, along certain buffered areas that not only were brought up by this board, but planning board and DEC and Army Corps in specific areas that were sensitive, the pond being one of them, like Brett explained. We also have, and it's not on these drawings, but I can commit to it tonight, a common amenity, and I was part of the Louisi team prior employment next door, but most of these renters, buyers are going to need EV charging, right? So we will be implementing some type of EV chargers throughout the development, whether it's in these overflow spaces for folks, or if they require it within the overall building programming, it'll be an option for those buyers to have the upgrade within garages. Usually, again, back to obtainability and pricing and whether or not somebody has an EV or not, it's usually an option. But, as Brett stated, we're in a little bit of a conundrum of the PDD at sketch plan. And I know this board would like a lot more detail, right? It is a unique situation for you as a board to look at a sketch plan at this state in time in this PDD process. So if we can represent more stuff and understanding in this sketch plan format, we will for you folks. But as you know, the procurement of the rest of the design happens after this tentative zoning approval with the town board. Later on is when we jump into the actual conceptual and preliminary designs. So as Brett stated, and I thought it was an awesome idea that he had with the expanded long form, we tried to drive that additional information that's really hard to see on a sketch plan for you folks, to be inclusive of all the other reports and documentation that we've worked on over the course of the last 2 years with outside agencies, planning board, and other sub-consultants aside from Brett. So I'd like to thank everybody.
I appreciate you coming to talk to us. I think this was a very informative presentation. Thank you.
Yes.
I just want to reiterate our board looks at a total picture. Its impact in the surrounding areas, its impact on the environment. It's very broad, and we make our decisions on whether this project may have a substantial impact in a number of areas. And so, the bar is there, and, that's what we're going to make our decision on based on that. So we do have, concerns about it. I would like to see your EAF and your documentation. So look forward to seeing that.
Yeah, and we wish could have got it to you sooner. To apologize, but when you see the size of the documents, I think the long.
It was about 3 or 4 days.
Yeah, Brett.
Most of it came together Sunday afternoon when I was finalizing everything, and then we wanted to review everything.
Okay.
A good read though, 245 pages.
So at this time, does anyone, go ahead.
Well, I thought that was a nice presentation of what they provided last night and the history of the project. Laura, maybe, do you want to just speak to the PUD process and where this is? Chuck and Brett spoke about sketch plan. I know we've talked about it before at the planning board a lot, but do you want to just describe, what's happened to date and where it is with the sketch plan?
Oops. Yeah, sure. So I know you guys have been looking at this for a couple months, and we were lucky enough to get the developer to come tonight to answer some questions. Planning board is drafting a recommendation to the town board right now, and the town board has called for their public hearing on April 30th. So we, process-wise, I think because we just got so much new information, I think tonight is just a good night to kind of talk through the project, ask the developer questions, and then I'll forward you guys the link to look at all the additional information that they supplied to us today. And then I think we should be thinking about doing a recommendation of the town board at our next meeting. And that should be in plenty of time for them to digest what thoughts you have, so that they could take action on the preliminary PUD in May. One thing to think about, which we kind of learned from 3900 State Street, is that that the town board is really the lead agency on this. It's the biggest thing. So I think that we should incorporate anything that we can think of in it now. Chuck has mentioned, and I don't know if he said this, my daughter came in and out for a second, that he'd be willing to continue to work with you guys on things, which I think is great. And the planning board would be willing to listen to you guys, I think, too. But I think your main recommendation, because of the way that a PUD works, should be potentially at your next meeting. And that's because the zone is actually going to be changed by the town board potentially in May.
Hey, Laura, I have a question about that because several of the issues that have been raised by the board are highly technical, related to wetland retention, impacts to surrounding areas. And I think that the town interest would best be served if we had an independent person look at some of the issues here. I know that you guys have supplied some stuff. I've actually looked at some of the stuff today. Some of the older stuff, not the newer stuff. But I think the issues are complex, and I'd like to make sure that this board makes the best possible decision. And I'm not sure without that we can do that.
Yeah, I think that's really fair. And what we talked about a little bit at the workshop was that we can, I'm pretty sure Weston and Sampson has a biologist in their company because it's a pretty big company. And we identified them as our town designated engineer. We do still need to set up that escrow. But we can work with the applicant and get that escrow going and then send all the documents to them. They can summarize it and just make sure that it's accurate and that it, that it reflects everything properly, and then get a recommendation back to you guys. I would think that that is doable in a month. I can talk to Dan Biggs, but it seems to me to be doable. And so we just need to finalize with Chuck and Brett the TDE escrow. But yeah, I definitely think, especially with that volume of documents, that we can have the TDE look at that for us and just double check everything.
And
That help the, well, go ahead, Claire.
And Laura, what I was going to say too is I was even going to almost go a half a step further back. As Brett mentioned, this is probably the second PUD in the history of Niskayuna that we can think of. So as you mentioned, it's a pretty complicated project. And just the process is that Chuck and Brett had to make an application to the town board even to get kind of started. So they made an application to the town board. The town board approved that, which allowed them to submit a sketch plan application for the project. So that's kind of where we are now. It's like an enhanced sketch plan. It's not as simple as a subdivision sketch plan, but it's also not the final approval. And if you go in the code, there's all these things that you have to present that Brett has just spoken to. A lot of what he was speaking about is in the code, so they've looked at the code and they've tried to present their plan to show that they've looked at all those things that the code requires. So kind of the next big step for the project is to get sketch plan approval from the planning board. The planning board can't do that until the CAC makes a seeker recommendation. So that's kind of where the CAC is fitting in. And as Dart mentioned, the CAC, when they look at seeker, that's a very broad aperture of how they're looking at the project. So from like a really high level, that's where the project is. And they're seeking sketch plan approval for the design with the materials they presented last night. Then the next step will be, there's another step of more of a final next level approval where after the sketch plan, you do even more detailed research and information. And like Brett spoke, the stormwater basins may change or things that kind of goes into the next level of design.
Yeah, Clark, I would have to say that we need more clarity on the stormwater.
So that's what I was,
Because-
what I was just going to say.
Yeah.
I just wanted to get the process
mhm.
out, because I think that's what everybody has to understand, the process. Then if there's specific things that the CAC is not comfortable with,
Yeah.
they should speak to
that's
those.
what we
But-
really need to seek to understand, because if I look at this parcel and I went through and I looked at the contour lines, it's very, very flat
It is.
in the area, right? So I applaud your use of putting a rain garden or something between the buildings, but that's at the same elevation as the wetlands. So it's hard for me to envision how that can work in there. And we're still concerned, we talked about the concentration and, the impact to the wetlands as far as the wetlands, are they draining into the canal bed, and how does that interplay with that? So there are issues that I think we would need to get some resolution on, because again, our threshold may have an impact, and, so I think we do have some work here to do. I just want to be upfront about it.
And one thing, I just want to express to this board, as I said, Mr. DeSallo's been doing development in this town for the better part of a half a century. He's not going anywhere. At least I hope he's not going anywhere anytime soon. He's a neighbor. He's a great guy. And his family is involved with this development as well. We'll end up having a substantial area of open space with this project. The undisturbed area alone is nearly 23 acres, which is more than half of the site itself. And then you add in just the general open space, which will all be controlled, and other than the land being donated to the town as a park, will all be controlled by the homeowners association. That homeowners association is going to want an open space management plan.
Mhm.
We have to provide that. We would respectfully ask, after listening to the gentleman and the young lady here this evening about mowing and about pollinator species and how, the impacts of managing Blackneck Park, which is under municipal control, and how that can benefit the biodiversity of the site. We would respectfully ask the expertise of this board in helping us develop a open space management plan that works best for not only the developer, but the community itself and the overall biodiversity of this. site.
That's a step in the right direction.
It's a wonderful parcel. I love the parcel. It's a great
Mhm.
parcel. I think it's got a lot of potential. I think there's a lot of educational potentials with the canal bed there. It's one of the few places in the town where the canal bed is that.
Yeah, actually, that is in a national corridor, and that's actually on the National Historic Register. that
So
canal.
it
And
is.
so is the trolley line. So there's a lot of opportunities there, and that is, some of the issues that we have to wrestle with.
Understood. And, we're not going anywhere. We are looking towards the expertise of you people who work with this every day. I have more of an environmental background than most engineers, a graduate of environmental science and forestry. So I do have a good grasp of the environmental concerns and, the biodiversity on that site. And I do want to know that we want to work with you. But at the same time, we also, as Chuck said, we've been working very, very hard to try to get to a point where we can provide attainable housing in the town of Niskayuna. I've lived here since 97, whatever that, you do the math, for 30 some odd years. I haven't seen such a lack of attainable housing in the town of Niskayuna the time I've been here. I think actually when I moved here was the last time I saw attainable housing, and I don't know why, but there were a lot of homes in Old Niskayuna for sale. I think because there was a lot of new development in the town that people were upsizing to. Now there isn't that, but people want to stay here, so they're choosing to stay in their homes in Old Niskayuna and add on and improve that. So you're not getting that turnover, and you're not getting the entry level homes. And even some of the entry level homes are going for more than what some of these condos will be going for. And we want to be able to provide that so that we can bring in new people, new young, professionals, or allow. I've done probably 400 units of condominium developments over the last decade. And what we found in almost every single one is it's young professionals or seniors downsizing. It just seems to be a great fit for that because, and both would be an excellent benefit to this community, because I know Metroplex is looking for young professionals to have storefronts within a bike ride to downtown Schenectady, because they want Schenectady to be a hub for office and bring in business. We want to be able to provide them with that. So we're playing a game of give and take here, trying to keep that density and be able to provide that while still maintaining a environmentally friendly and good project.
Was there price points mentioned? I didn't get price points.
Do you have a price point?
Chuck, you probably know him.
So I try not to put price points into any. Yeah. So what I can
just keep bringing it up. So
obtainable. What I mean by obtainable is, so if you were to look at our districts, whether it's 1 acre requirements, half acre requirements, and you look at the price points of those homes, right, depending on the neighborhood, I mean, they're all 700,000 plus, right? It's hard pressed nowadays to build a new construction home in a regular R district subdivision that's not $700,000 to $1 million, right? It's the current market right now with construction costs, interest rates, and everything else for the builders, and the infrastructure that's required with the spacing between those lots.
Oh, okay. So you're not talking about someone reselling a house in this unit.
No, I'm talking new development. Yep.
Yeah. So
okay,
those houses are less. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So, the condos are a smaller format, shared space. It's a condominium corp. The infrastructure is obviously less of a spacing, and that's how the market has been driven at these lower price points for condos in comparison to detached single family homes, new construction. So when, I don't use we stay away from the term affordable.
Yeah, yeah,
Obtainable.
it's perfectly
Yeah.
fine. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Not
I know how
AMI
much-
based.
I know how much the Celts ones are going for. So, yeah.
Yeah.
You did actually have a range in an earlier version of the project narrative, but
Yeah.
I know how
And you can
difficult
look
that
at,
can be.
yeah, you can look at Rotterdam and some of the other places that are selling condos, and they're in that price range that's more obtainable in reach than, and a lot less than a single family home. Yeah. Yep.
Just Ellen, as another kind of factual thing to your question, one of the things the planning board asked Chuck and Brett to put together was kind of some comparable projects relative to spacing. So there is a document where they gave a number of similar kind of projects in other communities. Several of them are in Rotterdam, some a little
Yeah.
bit to the north, but it does kind of show you the density. And, you know, we had thought one things you could do is kind of go into Zillow or something and look at some of the price points of some of those. You'd get somewhat of a range of
Mhm.
just relative to other housing.
I was just
options.
bringing it up because they brought it up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you
So-
keep bringing it, but I do appreciate, you know, the outlets in the, are you planning it then on putting solar panels for the people that own the home, that own the condo, so that they can then use the that, and you know, be able to use the energy from there for their homes?
It's something we could contemplate within the condominium corp setup in the HOA. We'll have to look into that. I mean, the initial phase of this development is townhomes, which is up along Aqueduct. We haven't really dove into with our attorney yet how the condominium corp structure will be. You know, that the back of this development is an HOA with a condominium corp that sits over top of it, which requires a AGO approval, and we'll have to dig into that. One thing I can say that we are committing to on the renewable end of things is EV charging ready upgrades, and definitely some EV chargers in the guest parking stalls.
Yeah, I mean, you know, thank you. That is good. I just would say that, you know, living in these situations, your only access then to solar power is if you try to buy something that's someplace else, you know, I guess.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
it makes it a little bit more challenging for that homeowner to then be able to utilize it. So.
One of the things that we did on from my career in the multifamily space with apartments is we worked with National Grid on community solar projects. And when it still creates an impact though, because
Yeah.
they need the community, they need the people on their billing to sign up to the community solar project for the impacts, right?
Right.
So
yeah.
we have introduced that over, the course of my career on leasing and connecting. And that could be something that we could even connect homeowners to, is local community solar projects that have recently went online and need those members to join. So
Yeah, I just I appreciate the community solar projects. I just think that just depending on how they are or where they are, like, so if you drive out Blue Barns Road, right? So, all those people are not happy because they tore down all those trees and then they put up all those solar panels.
Mhm.
Right. And while they are, to me, it's just that when you've got a building, right? So if you've got a building and you have the ability to then, and you have no trees that will obstruct it. Whereas in other parts of Niskayuna, you have, I have 2 trees that are 75 years old that are, oaks that, makes it very difficult unless I take them down to have solar panels on my home. So I am part of the community solar group, but I do see that, the give and take. And I just think as as developers, you need to push the line a little bit, even because you're producing these. And then, us on the town side, we're trying to do it as well. Anyways, I appreciate it. And I do, and you were referencing, Rotterdam, and, there is a developer there who, he went and put solar panels up on all of his parking spaces for his apartment.
I was involved with this first one.
Yeah, it would be, yeah. So, Yeah, so that is, I mean, that's great, right?
Yeah. Dave is a special developer, being an electrical engineer. Some of the stuff he's done over there is completely out of my wheelhouse, but he's done a tremendous job with it.
Well,
I worked very closely with him on that first development, Net Zero One.
Yeah.
Over off of Burdick Street, and it was a challenge, and it was a challenge not only with making sure that we can meet the requirements. A lot of it was the building type and where the windows are faced in the building and that type of stuff, because but then a lot of it was situating the buildings, and we had a lot of long discussions with the town. Hey, listen, it's got to be a grid layout because I have to have these buildings facing south. I can't rotate the buildings or we're going to lose all our NYSERDA credits. And that's so there was a lot there. Beautiful I loved working on it. It was a great design, and I know he's doing a similar one up in Amsterdam right now. I understand what you're saying. We'd have to look, how that could be implemented within the HOA. That's the only difficult thing with a condominium type of structure versus
Yeah.
an apartment structure.
Yeah, I don't know what comes first, the HOA or the buildings, but,
Usually the HOA ends up trumping everything, unfortunately.
all right, well, whoever designs the HOA, then whoever holds that card. So, yeah, and his project was done a number of years ago.
Yes.
So, I mean, we've learned a lot since
Yes,
then,
we have.
so, yeah, thanks, thank you.
Do you want to go? I have a question, but Dan, why don't you go?
I do. Thank you. Laura, can we see the sketch again, please?
Oh yeah,
Any version of it?
I wanted to unmute myself for a second because this site is so tight. Like I don't know how you would necessarily be able to add the ground mounted, but maybe you could make the HOA like allow the solar panels on the roof. But another thing I was thinking is maybe there's only one spot, and I know it wouldn't cover all the houses, but maybe you could put the solar panels over the parking spots in the public parking lot. I don't know. That might be one place you might be able to get it. Go ahead, Dan.
Thank you.
Sorry.
I wanted
Which
to talk
one did you do? Yeah.
any of them. This is fine. I wanted to talk about what part of this will be accessible to people that aren't a resident.
Okay.
Yep.
So I know that we mentioned it was
Can you
specific and how they would get in and where they're allowed.
So can you hold on one second, Brett?
We should,
Laura, in
we-
the updated sketch plans, there's an actual sheet 4, I think.
This one? That
Uh,
one?
This one, yeah. So we did provide this board and the planning board an updated drawing that's inclusive of all the easements. So before Brett goes, I'll just explain. There's a total of 6 easements for access onto this property. So alongside the regulatory research that we did in the last 2 years, we also did a lot of communication with outside agencies. So to date, we kicked off a process with Parks and Rec, which is very similar to what Rivers Ledge did next door. And with my experience with that, with the planning department on the neighboring development, we are following the same protocol with Parks for an access easement there. Then there's 2 National Grid crossings as well, or 3, I should say, that Brett will go over in a minute. Those are being done through PTR processes with National Grid. We had the underlying rights to cross the National Grid property, both for our access and emergency access through our title abstract research on the property. So we follow those points on the title abstract through this PTR, which is a permit process. So Brett did this drawing, which I think explains the complexity of what I'm trying to explain right now visually. And I'll let Brett explain.
I'll go briefly. To Chuck's point, the town access, we need to provide that, this red easement for the town access to the crossing of the bike path. The blue easement would be from the bike path to the town of Niskayuna for the crossing, because they won't grant a private organization crossing easement, even though dating back to the old railroad records, we had easements by right across that. They did not want to do that. So the town, we're going to do it the same way, same methodology that they did for Rivers Ledge. As far as the public access, this yellow easement right here would allow to from Aqueduct Road down
green.
to
The green one, Laura,
Yeah.
sorry.
green. Yeah, sorry, green. Would allow public access to the parking area, which would have a walking path to were a kayak launch along the river, and the entire area, which includes this little triangle over here, which gets conveyed to the town for the continuation of Aqueduct Park. Where we'd be proposing, that red line you see up there, possibly a trail system through there in and around the parcel, as well as ultimately back onto our site and across where the emergency access is going, to provide for continued access over to Rivers Ledge and ultimately to the continuation of Aqueduct Park on that side as well. Or people can just utilize underneath the power lines here, which would probably be the case in many cases. But that's the public access easement. And then the other easements probably don't care about them as much, but they're just utility easements.
Yeah.
We need to obtain to cross the gas line, and there's a gas line and power line here. And then we have a gas line here and underneath the power lines there.
And those crossings outside of our emergency access also, when we do the PTR process, National Grid wants to know the overall intensity of use. So it's emergency access, but also pedestrian access, because Rivers Ledge, when designed and built, was on the other side of that. You can see the outline that Brett brought in of their far right building. There's a parking lot up next to their senior building and a paved trail that runs along that entrance down to the where our emergency access will go. And then that trail goes behind that building to Aqueduct Park. So the interconnectivity of that area allows us to cross right there, and keep the reason we didn't bring it down the other way was wetlands and there's an active stream. So this allows us a cleaner path with limited environmental impacts to be able to get into Rivers Ledge and down to the park.
So on the green line, top right, if I'm coming to the site as a member of the public, I can drive to it,
Mhm.
park my car, and then go and walk the red line, launch a kayak.
The parking lot is specifically for that.
Can I also get there on foot if I'm on the bike path?
Yes.
Yes.
Come down the bike path
Down the bike path, enter.
and never disturb what part is supposed to be private?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
I have another question, and this came up the other day, and this you addressed a little bit tonight, and this has to do with the density calculation. And I'm not going to make a judgment on the density. It's been an issue for several boards, but we have a disagreement about how this density calculation should be made and how there are different approaches that if you guys require relief, they're possible. And I do have a concern about that from a precedent, and I think it would be a good benchmark to do that particular layout, the sketch plan, with the way that I believe the town code requires, because it does refer back to the R2 code, and it does talk about how you would go about getting the density in the R2, and it says buildable lots. So I think when you walk through that, that basically indicates that's the way you should do it. And then you get the 30% on top of that. I don't know where that number is going to come out. And if that number is insufficient, then there's a process for getting that increased, because I know you guys do have a bottom line there. But I do believe that that's critical to this project, and it will basically get all the boards in line about this issue about density, because we'll know exactly where we stand as a town. So I am highly recommending that we go through this process.
So let me just ask, I mean, it's been brought up a couple times during our workshop and tonight
Yeah.
about relief, right? So like, I think that's the difference too, of just from a standpoint, and maybe the planning department can shed some light on that. A PDD is a legislative mechanism.
Yep.
There is no going to a ZBA. There's no, this is the mechanism, this route, this entitlement track is a legislative mechanism, hence why town board is lead agency, because they're changing the local code. The mechanism is this entitlement process. It's not an ADD. So there is no relief outside board or relief
Okay, well,
mechanism, then
the concern, then really the way I read the code is you can do R2, the way it's specified in R2, and then you get a 30% bump on that.
yeah, and I think that you brought up precedent at our workshop, and I think it would be great for this board. And again, I agree to disagree with you, sir. So I think if you folks read this entire expanded long form, our response letter, you'll see the direct point outs in the code. Brett did a very good job on outlining this. And Rivers Ledge was designed as a next door PUD under a completely different avenue of what you're saying in a density calculation.
I hear what you're saying.
Yep.
And regardless of what was done for Rivers Ledge, if the town made a mistake on that, so be it.
Well,
But when
did they?
Hear me out.
Yeah.
Rivers Ledge is a very different development that was put on a former car dump. So there were mitigating circumstances with that. That does not excuse the town for not requiring the proper process here.
Yeah, but
You-
I mean, just because there was nothing in the code that says because it's a special property with a junkyard that it's different.
I'm saying that the town made a mistake on that.
Uh,
And
I don't know if I agree with that.
I mean, if I could jump in, I think the material that was supplied last night was a very good update on the proposal. And there's a tremendous amount of technical detail in there on a variety of subjects. And I think, as Dart had mentioned, it seems like almost the next step is for this board to kind of digest that,
Mhm.
identify if there are areas like perhaps the density that still want to be talked about, or at least a proposal or an approach presented, as yours was presented, so that everybody has a clear line of sight of what items do we still want to talk about. Or just for the history, this project has been going on for a long time, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but the plans last night were the first plans that had the easement that Dan mentioned down to the kayak launch. So that's a huge step forward and a great evolution of the project. And it came about from great discussion during the workshops with both of you, with the planning board leads and the CAC leads. I think what Dart is bringing up is another subject that may not move, but it's just one that perhaps the CAC wants to talk or present a case to you. So, I mean, my feeling is that we made great strides in some areas, and maybe when some subject matter experts dig into a couple areas that the CAC has concerns with, we may have to talk about those a little bit more.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And Clark, I completely
It's our
agree.
second PUD. so,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know,
And I think the technical detailing, I think it's a great approach for the town, a town designated engineer to look at it. What I would say though is the density review, if we're at a point of impasse, I think it would be great just to have a workshop with the town attorney and our attorney.
Right.
And I'm not saying an aggressive meeting. I'm saying a workshop.
Right.
Because it's a legal item. It's not a technical item. It's something that I think we're, at a point of the planning board, I think has largely been okay with our density to date. The town board, when we initially came in at 209 units, said, this looks like a great project, move to planning board, right? I am just not at a position, and neither is our ownership group, on moving into any type of exercise that shows a lower density than we are at right now,
Right.
especially with a neighboring project
Yeah.
that based its density calculation on 10 units an acre on a reference that also relates to condos at 6 units an acre, right? Whether the town made a mistake or not, if they made a mistake, they set a precedent, right? So I think at the end of the day, we got to sit down with folks that understand law, legislation,
Right.
right? Because this is what a PDD is, or
Yeah.
PUD. It's a legislative mechanism.
Right. And I would agree that in that statement, you're kind of making the case for what Dart's concerns are. Right now you have what you're saying is a precedent of 1. he's saying
I
this
don't-
is,
no, no,
this
that's
is the
just one
second.
thing that we point out. So there's a precedent of case one PUD next door.
Right.
And then there's our interpretation of calculation versus sketch
Yeah,
plan.
no,
Right.
There's
and
a whole
I-
separate track and section
Right.
in the code
Right.
that says sketch. Our track says calculation.
Right.
And,
So
and
it's
I,
different.
and I certainly understand that. If
Yeah.
you go and look at the recommendations, if you just Google recommendations on that, there's several organizations in New York State that say the calculation should be done on the net. You know, not all the communities do that, but, you know, there's a substantial amount of communities that do it on the net. And I think the reasoning behind that, and I brought this up in the meeting the other day, is if I have a 10-acre parcel and 9 acres are wetland and unbuildable, that your interpretation doesn't make sense in that because you're not going to put 10 acres of housing or units on 1 acre. There's a balance there. You know, part of the PUD's objective is to improve the open space, provide access and parkland, and you are meeting some of those objectives. I'm not saying you're not. What I'm saying here, though, is there has been a concern about the density. There is this town, the impact, the more density you have, the bigger the impact on the site. And it's related to a lot of other issues. And we do have this town code that basically says R2, when you look at the R2, it says sketch plan, and then you get 30% above that.
Understood. One more thing.
And,
Yeah.
and, you know, we can sit down and we can talk about this and we can get you know, if you want to ask the town attorney on this, we can work through this.
I don't think you're going to settle it right now.
No, we're not
And
going to settle it now.
I think,
I'm not trying to settle it
Right.
right now. I'm just trying to raise that this is an issue.
Yeah,
we're talking
and-
about
and
today.
and I think everybody's goal is just to have everybody agree that there's a clear approach to resolving that. That's
Yeah.
all. Because there may be another PUD a couple years down the road. So I think the town just wants to have
Yeah.
that process.
I think we
settled
want to
out.
have that. I think, you know, there's other options that, you know, may come out, you know, as far as the footprint of the buildings and stuff like that. I do have other questions, but I don't know if we want to ask them now or do we want to just see what you guys have?
I did not have a chance to read the new info
Okay.
yet. We got it yesterday, and I'd like to look at it.
Yeah, okay.
That doesn't
So
mean you can't ask your question.
And we're down into the weeds.
But
on
I am
some of
not
these
ready yet.
Questions pretty deep.
I actually just have some clarifications on stuff. Like, I was looking at your biology report, figure 2, the census report.
That's a requirement. Yep.
Yeah, no, is that blue, is the blue there all urban and you guys are not in the urban spot?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, it's a new, one of the 11 criteria of
So-
the wetland.
So I have a question on that, is once you build your development, now are you blue?
No, it's all urban census mapping. I think.
Well, the
about-
next census, it would be urban, right? I don't know the answer to that.
I honestly couldn't answer how census urban areas are created and that.
Yeah. That is a strange topic. Laura and I dug into that, and there's only a very few sections in Niskayuna that are not considered urban. There's a little bit behind Momentive, I believe, and a little bit along that portion of the river.
Yeah, because this issue came up, I think someone asked about the,
Yeah.
Joy, you
Yeah.
asked about the wetland issue.
And you'll see, I mean, essentially what's great about where we're at on this from a tentative zoning approval request is you folks are looking at a true JD decision. So that wetland delineation report was reviewed by the Army Corps of Engineers, the federal government, and New York State DEC at state, and they both concurred on it. So,
And they both walked the site.
Yep.
It wasn't
So-
an office review.
No, I read your biologist report.
And
so
and one thing I do want to just food for thought. No, you don't need to respond now. In looking at this, like you said, it's a calculation, like you researched calculation based on net,
Mhm.
meaning subtracting out
Yep.
the wetlands. If we do a calculation, like I've done it, based on the net, and I subtract out all the jurisdictional wetlands, we end up with 281 units. So, and I can provide you with that calculation. The issue we run into with this project is the configuration of right-of-way lines and the fact that the town of Niskayuna not only has a lot width, but a lot depth requirement.
Mhm.
So that throws you into some really odd shaped areas on the site that becomes very difficult. However, what we have on this site, which becomes very advantageous for a planned unit development, a cluster, a higher density area, is one large area of space that doesn't have wetlands, that is an area that can be developed where we can get that density, where we're not trying to squeeze in lots in certain locations. And in my experience over the years, that is very much a primary function of the planned unit development process, is to try to get the density that you can get. And, we've got the governor right now who is urging, and actually there's discussion about repealing some of the wetland regulations to allow for housing development within the state of New York, because it is deemed as such a need. This allows us to obtain that density that we would get if we could squeeze out every little acre of land on the site, even if we do remove those net wetlands, and obtain that density. So I just want you to give that as a consideration. If it's a calculation and we remove the wetlands, I'm okay with that, and I will provide you with those numbers.
And lead the board to, looking at the intent of what Rivers Ledge was with what was considered a big house development, 10-unit buildings spread out and everything. We did 4-unit buildings with some 8-unit buildings. And to Brett's point, that, it's not this intrusive 100-unit building with access parking. This approach with a condominium development on this project, as Brett said, takes into account a number of different things just within building programming as a developer, right? Garage parking, right? Small format buildings, yards, right? I mean, if you look at this plan and look at the orange shapes and look at how much green space is there, right? I mean, this is almost 50% green space, is it not? Open space. This is a very small impact to a large site, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely what people want. Like, this is what people are moving into. This is what they're looking for. They're not looking for the other type of development that was before. This is what, when people are moving, this is what they want, because unfortunately, these are their starter homes. They're not able to buy the small homes like in Colebrook and in Rotterdam. They can't do that kind of thing here. But so I just have I think like 2 quick things. So you mentioned access to the wetlands. So are you planning on doing that on the access road, to be able to get to your wetlands? Is that what you're thinking on the right-hand side there? To have the truck access, I guess, or is that what you're planning?
It's
You
actually
said you
it's actually the gray strips. The access to the stormwater management
Okay.
ponds are those gray strips there. It's required under the stormwater
Right, yeah,
we
you
would've-
said that, but
it's required under the.
it was hard to see on
Yeah,
my black and white.
That's all right. And it's, my thought is we can look at some measures to try to offset that. Because to be honest with you, it's a larger area than I want it to be. But we have to, under the New York State
Yeah,
Stormwater
that's
Design
perfectly
Manual,
fine.
provide that access. Because what happens is those ponds don't get dredged out, and then you have issues down the road.
Right, yeah, no, you can see it in other parts of
Yes, you can.
yeah. So, and then the project narrative that was done. On page 5,
Okay.
so on page 5, it comes down to, I'm sorry, I'm just pulling it up myself. So it comes down to the potential impacts, and it's noise and visual and drainage
Yes.
and traffic and sewer. So I think one of the most important things that's missing here is lighting impact. And it was it's a really big problem to your neighbor next door. And
Yes.
I tried very hard to express how important it is to reduce the lighting, that it is enormously affects the waterfront.
Yeah.
And so it isn't addressed on here. You have your schools, your, everything else, your wetlands, but lighting is an issue.
Yep.
So,
And we'll commit in that to dark sky lighting 100%. And I think if anything too, Brett could explain some of the undisturbed buffer spaces that essentially, from perspectives of Aqueduct Road and the river, and this is vastly
This
different
is
than River's Ledge.
very,
No,
very
I
Yeah.
understand, but I'm
Yeah.
just saying that, light is light.
Mhm.
And what is allowed in your, in the HMO or whatever it is.
Yep.
That affects everybody there.
What I can say about this type of development versus apartment style living and apartment style developments. And you're welcome to go to a couple of those that I pointed out in Rotterdam.
Yeah,
Billy Avento's doing a great job with there's building another 124 of them in Rotterdam. The lighting is very minimal. It's single family style post lights in front of the residences in this
Yeah,
type
but
of application.
it's still, I understand it, but like when you drive down my street, right, it's single family lights, but it's every, you know what I mean?
Right.
So
And
every family doesn't need to have a light post here. Like,
no,
you just
no,
don't have
I
to,
agree with you.
Right,
It's-
like that would be ridiculous.
and not every family will have a light post. And what we can certainly, again, work with this board and work with you on determining what is most appropriate. Really, safety lighting. We can talk about photovoltaic cells that dim the lights after certain hours or actually raise them up enough to provide security lighting, but not enough to be bright and obtrusive. There's a lot of different options out there that we can look at. As well as obviously we do everything dark sky compliant these days.
Right.
And we do have, like, to Chuck's point, when you talk about the river, you're not even going to see this project from the river. Fortunately or unfortunately, and this project isn't going to see the river, fortunately or unfortunately, because you are going to have that large green space buffer on the north side. But we certainly can definitely address that and minimize that to the.
Yeah,
Because
I think.
because it is a wildlife corridor.
Yeah.
for
Yeah,
sure.
and I want
For
this.
sure.
I want this board to realize too. Outside of it was brought to our attention, and I did not realize this, that this board had thought it was going to lose its opportunity after this recommendation to work with us, and it maybe within the code or the process maybe, but I don't see why we wouldn't continue to work with you folks, like, to those types of comments. That's stuff that when we work with Dave Darpino with the ARB, the lighting is going to be driven by the ARB too. So it's always, as us as developers, you're getting that pull back and forth
Yeah,
between
I
boards.
think what what you see here is that the planning board is, even as the project progresses, are going to be more concerned with the nuts and bolts of the project. We're concerned about the impacts and stuff. So I think what the board's concerned about, and I think Ellen raised it, is if you have a regular lamp and everybody puts a 5,000 degree bulb in there,
Yeah.
it's going to look like a prison yard, and I think there are ways to get around that. I don't know if you've ever considered using like 4-foot posts with light,
The Ballard style posts. yeah.
bollard style
We've-
lighting and stuff like
I've
that.
looked
And that
at-
goes a long way. And, not using the 5,000 K lights, but
Yeah.
drop them down to 300. That makes actually a very big difference.
In
in
the
wildlife.
temperature of the
Yep,
LED
the
lighting,
temperature,
it
yep,
makes
mhm.
makes a huge difference. The Ballard lights work wonderful along walkways
Mm-hmm.
and lighted walkways. But I also think dimming photovoltaic cells also, we've had a great success with those where they'll
Mm-hmm.
actually dim as time goes on and then maybe raise in temperature a little bit as they sense motion or
Mm-hmm.
during certain times of the day to provide. There's a lot of technology out there, and it is something that, and I apologize for not addressing it in that narrative. It is something that is becoming more and more prevalent, especially with the introduction of LED lights. They're great. They use less energy, but those really low temperature LED lights are obtrusive. They're obnoxious with the glare that they show. The softer, we can certainly look at that with the designers, the lighting designers, and make sure that we address that to the maximum extent practical.
Go
I
ahead.
have one quick question for clarification. As you and the council mentioned, stormwater management has been brought up frequently. On your environmental assessment form, on page 176, there was a question I'll say what I remember. My laptop just died. Where will the stormwater be directed? And you had an answer. Yeah, if to surface water indicate, and you indicated wetland to Mohawk River. And there are many known big environmental impacts for managed stormwater being directed to Mohawk River. I wonder if you have considered any of those.
Yeah, obviously, under the New York State Stormwater Design Manual, we can't direct stormwater away from where it's going under the existing condition. So what we do is we analyze what's going there now, how it flows there now. So all of the stormwater on this site ultimately ends up in the Mohawk River. As it stands now, the rainfall yesterday, it all ended up in the Mohawk River, with the exception of even the small amount of the pond and ended up overflowing into the Mohawk River. We're not going to change that drainage pattern. However, what we're going to do is we're going to provide water quantity controls and water quality controls, which are both required under the green infrastructure practices. It's a long process. It's if you ever want some really fun reading on a weekend, pick up the New York State Stormwater Design Manual. It's about that thick. I've been through every new copy multiple times. It's very explicit in how we have to design the stormwater in order to meet state standards for the just to obtain our notice of intent. And in that process, we will be treating the quality through various measures, whether it be bioretention, whether it be filtration, whether it be disconnection of roof runoff, all that stuff helps with stormwater quality. And then we also have to attenuate it on site so that we're not saying, hey, we got that 1.25 inches of rain yesterday. We're not just going to blow it through into those wetlands and inundate those wetlands. We're going to let it seep out into those wetlands over time so that you don't have flooding downstream and impact the downstream and ultimately into the Mohawk River. The wetlands on this site tend to be in the canal and then eventually work their way towards the east and then down into the river for the most part. So.
Yeah. We just need to really understand how that's going to come in play. We don't want to degrade the wetlands anyway. And we don't want to degrade the historic structure of the canal.
Understood. And
that's, that I think is something that the town engineer can help us with. I mean, again, it's technical.
I would say probably 75% of my engineering comments on every project I've had have been wet or stormwater comments, because it is one of the biggest topics for the last 20 years. And it's something I do pride myself in work doing an awful lot about, because it's something I've been very much in every project I've had, whether it's the tiniest 2-lot subdivision to 350 lot PUDs.
And it's important for this particular town because we've had a lot of problems from past developments.
Right.
And we are constantly dealing with water problems in this town. It's getting worse, continually worse.
I'm well aware.
So, it's interesting if you go and you read how much the rain has increased the intensity, something like 66% since 2000. Just with the
right, it's
high rainfalls.
We're
intense
not,
rainfalls.
And we have to be careful because it's this is totally off topic in a sense. The rainfall which we are required to design around is the 2, the 10, the 100 year, 50 year. Those rainfall data are based upon historic. Cornell Cooperative Extension keeps. You actually can drop a pin and it'll tell you what your rainfall amounts are. Those rainfall amounts in the last 100 years, we haven't seen anything bigger than the 25-year storm, I believe, based on maybe 50. I can't remember. We have not seen a 100-year storm in the last 100 years. You think we have?
I thought Irene was.
Irene was not, because it was spread out over 2 days. Irene in the Catskills was, but at Albany County Airport, if you look at Hurricane Irene and the data Hurricane Irene, it did not exceed the thresholds of what the 100-year storm is.
So we just happened to be in the sweet spot.
We did happen to be in the sweet spot, and Lock 7 did a wonderful job containing all the runoff from the Catskills.
Yeah, I think our concern is to protect the wetlands and the infrastructure that's there.
And I know we will put that into calculations and numbers for you. But trust me that that is first and foremost and paramount on every site design that I do. So.
I think we need to read what you've presented to us. I appreciate you coming. I appreciate our meeting the other day. I think the dialogue is really important.
Mhm.
And I'd like to apologize for my excitement the other day, but just know, I mean, we're really emotionally connected to this project. I think it's a great project. I think it will have great impact, not only just to the town, but to the county as well. And appreciate working with
Yeah.
you folks and hoping to continue to.
And to Chuck's point, I've been involved with this project for a number of years, and I'm excited to see it move forward. I'm a resident of Niskayuna and have been for 30 some odd years, almost 30 years now. I want to see what's best for the town. I think the tax base is going to be beneficial for everybody. The minimal amount of infrastructure that is owned by the town at next to nothing, with providing that tax base, I think is going to be beneficial all the way across the board. And being able to provide that attainable housing. At the same time, I also am very sensitive to the Mohawk River corridor, to the sensitive areas. I live on the Leishakill. I have the Leishakill Nature Preserve in my backyard. I frequent it almost daily. I am very sensitive to everything that goes on within this town from an environmental standpoint. I have bald eagles nesting in my yard. What an incredible thing to be able to wake up and listen to them at 5 o'clock in the morning when you were trying to get a good night's sleep. But we're here to work with you. We're here to hear your input, and we're here to move forward in a positive direction.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
What I would propose we do is, unless we have any other climate smart initiatives, if we don't have anything, I suggest we adjourn.
Second.
Okay, then I guess anybody want to stay longer? Everybody-
It's
Oh,
not
Laura,
an
you do.
actual
Okay.
thing, but I just wanted to let you guys know that the state is doing like this like very fancy like climate leadership retreat, and it's free, and they did accept me going, so I'm really excited. It's like the end of April, and I'll get more and much more in-depth training on like climate smart stuff. So I'm very excited about it. I'll keep you updated.
Oh, that's great. Thank you, Laura.
Have fun.
Okay, meeting's adjourned.